What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Underdog Podcast. Today, I'm bringing you my Week 6 power rankings. Just like in weeks past, I'll be going through these teams 32-1 and how I feel about them. Standings don't really have anything to do with it. Like I've said before, it's more so, how I just feel about these teams week in, week out. How much you beat somebody by and how much you lose to somebody by does matter. Who you lose to matters and who you beat matters. So without further ado, let's get right into this. Starting off with our number 32 team, and Saints fans, it is not you. It is the Cincinnati Bungles, and I am calling them the Bungles until further notice because this team is absolutely terrible. Dropping 4 spots this week, falling from the 28th position. Listen, man, the Bengals just traded for Joe Flacco. That's how desperate this team is. They just traded for Joe Flacco. Jake Browning looked terrible again for the third week in a row. He picked it up a little bit in the second half, but this team is just lost, man. I mean, at this point in time, the Bengals are holding out hope. What it tells me based on them trading Flacco is they're holding out hope that Joe Burrow comes back in December and that they can somehow sneak into the playoffs and have an opportunity to win. I just don't think that this team's built for that. I genuinely don't know if they're going to be in a position to do that. And, we'll have to see. This defense is still really bad. I wonder if it, excuse me, if it gets to a point where they end up trading Trey Hendrickson, we will have to see whether or not that happens. But as of right now, Bengals are at number 32. Moving on to my number 31 team, dropping a position is the 0-5 New York Jets, the only winless team in the NFL to this point in time. And look, listen, the Jets, I knew it was going to be a tough battle for them against the Dallas Cowboys. It was about who was going to stop, the air attack in that one, and they actually got destroyed on the ground. Javonte Williams had a really good game. He had a couple of really big runs. Justin Fields is not the answer at quarterback. We've known this for a very long time. He has not played very well. Breece Hall actually played really well in this game. Another 100-yard performance for him on the ground. He has the most explosive runs this season in the entire league, so he's not the problem. But he might not be here for very much longer. He might be dealt by the New York Jets. And there's just not much to get excited about here. Aaron Glenn has not coached very well. I think that Tanner Engstrand has done a pretty good job there coaching the offense, but Steve Wilks at this point, why does he have a job? He's really struggled the last couple of years to really call a good defense in the National Football League, so not much to cheer about here if you're a Jets fan. On to draft season, I guess, already here on October 7th. It continues to be a theme here for the Jets that they are just completely incompetent. Moving on to our number 30 team, moving up one spot, is the Tennessee Titans. And although you won this game, Titans fans, I'm going to give you a lot of credit. You took advantage of the stupidity of the Arizona Cardinals. I don't know how much of a victory it actually is, because it means that Brian Callahan is keeping his job for at least another couple weeks. So I think that's, the real L if you're a Titans fan here. But Cam Ward looked great in that second half, coming back, leading that comeback. Calvin Ridley had his best game of the year by far. Tony Pollard looked good. Tyjae Spears, coming back from IR, looked pretty good. And that defense, man, still keeps them in games, despite if Amari DiMercato just didn't drop the ball in the end zone, it's a 28-6 game at that point and you're losing, defense kept them in the ball game. Shout out to the Titans defense. It still looks pretty good. But how much of a win is this really? Unless if you get your season back on track and you start to string together some wins, which I don't know if that's possible because they, kind of just won this game because the Cardinals' absolute stupidity. We'll see, but Titans, give them credit for the win this week. They took advantage of those mistakes and they were able to get a W here. Moving on to my number 29 team, dropping 3 spots, it is the New York Giants. Losing to the Saints this week, honestly, in almost an inexcusable fashion. I mean, giving up those turnovers was brutal from Slayton and Scadaboo when you were driving down the field to, potentially tie the game or take the lead. And they returned it all the way for a touchdown. That was a brutal spot to fumble there. I think Jackson Dart will continue to improve, but he looked kind of in this game. Cam Scadaboo probably had his worst game, taking over as the starter Obviously rough day at the office for, pass catchers, but Theo Johnson kind of showed some life in this game for the Giants. So shout out to Theo Johnson, who had probably his best game of the year, and Shane Bowen continues to just be brutal, man. Gave up a long touchdown in this one to Rashid Shaheed on the play action fake, which shout out to me. That's how I said the Saints were gonna beat the Giants in this one, but kind of regressing back to what he was the first 3 weeks of the season. So just a brutal loss here for the New York Giants, man. Speaking of, the New Orleans Saints, moving on to our number 28 team, moving up 4 spots. It is the New Orleans Saints this week. Getting their first win of the season. Shout out to Spencer Rattler getting his first win as a National Football League quarterback, along with Kellen Moore. First win as a coach. I think they look good, man. Continue to improve offensively. I feel like they've improved offensively almost every week. That run game looks pretty good. Kamara and Kendre Miller, who really hadn't shown much prior to this season, is looking really good. I actually was looking at the missed tackles force rate, and he's in the top 10. He's like 18 missed tackles forced this season, which he did really well at TCU. So I think that that might be a bright spot there. You might have a running back for the future there, and I think defensively they were able to create turnovers when given the opportunity, and they took advantage of them. Took one back. So I think for the Saints, can you build some momentum here? I'm still wondering when we're going to see Tyler Shuck this season. I think that that has to come into play at some point, unless if Rattler just starts winning games for this team consistently, which you never know. This is the NFL. It could happen. I'm going to bet against it, but you never know. We'll see. Moving on to our number 27 team, dropping 3 spots here. It is the Las Vegas Raiders, blown out by the Colts this week, and we're going to start with Geno Smith. I'm a huge Geno Smith guy, but he's just got to play better, flat out. I think he's being too aggressive with the football in his hands. I think that he is relying too much on his arm talent and, not reading the field well enough. He's just trying to fit every ball into a tight window, and it's not working. I do think that this pass protection has to be better, though, especially on the right side. They're getting killed over there with Parham and DJ Glaze. It's just not looking good there. And I think defensively, it's kind of just Max Crosby or bust right now. They don't really have a ton of talent on that side of the ball. They just released Jermaine Pratt today, so their linebacker talent is even thinner. So I think that, Vegas, it's just they got to get that offense figured out. I think they have Tennessee this week. This would be a good game for them to kind of get a get-right game, kind of get their footing back and see if they can be a competitive team down the stretch. Moving on to my number 26 team, dropping a spot in this week's power rankings, I have the Miami Dolphins, who honestly, blowing a 17-point lead to Carolina is brutal. I think that offensively in this game, they were off to a good start. Darren Waller got going again this week. They got Jalen Waddle the football, when necessary, but it's just situational football. I feel like Miami's been poor this season. They've been really poor, and despite, I think, McDaniel's efforts, really actually, putting together a good offense for this team, the last 4 weeks, I question, their attention to detail in those situations, because I feel like they just continue to just not play well. And defensively looked good in the first half. I mean, forced a couple of turnovers, it looked like they were going to cruise to victory, and then they just could not stop Rico Dowdle, who went for 206 yards, most by a running back this season. It was just unbelievable to see that collapse from Miami defensively. It was brutal. And, they continue to lack talent on that side of the ball. I think Anthony Weaver's doing a solid job of coaching that defense despite the lack of talent. But, man, just a brutal loss for Miami this week. Moving on to number 25 here. Moving up 4 spots, I got the Cleveland Browns, which I think might surprise people. But, full on moving to Dylan Gabriel, one of the 2 rookie quarterbacks they drafted. And I felt like he looked good, especially under pressure. He was pretty good. He was 12 of 17 for 72 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think Gabriel, his mobility showed up. I think that was the big thing, and he was able to make some plays. He kind of faded down the stretch, but I think you were encouraged from what you saw from Dylan Gabriel that he could operate the offense. I still think that this passing game, truly needs a lot of work, because Judy, Tillman, Bond, Thrash, all those guys are really struggling. I think really the only consistent pass catchers for them right now are Njoku and Fannin. So they need to get the ball into the hands of their receivers more often than not. This pass protection still is brutal. But Quinshon Judkins is an absolute stud, man. He looks really, really good for that team. And this defense is still really good, man. They're one of the best defense in the league, if not the best defense in the league. They got after Carson Wentz today. They just couldn't hold him in the end there. I felt like it was a miscommunication between Denzel Ward and the safety on that final play of the game. But I think if you're Cleveland, I think you're going to be a competitive team throughout the rest of the season, which, despite their 1-4 record, I don't know if you could have said that before, the start of the season. So I think if you're a Cleveland fan, at least you can hang your hat on that. Moving on to our next team here, coming in at number 24, moving up 3 spots, we have the Carolina Panthers, who are coming off of a comeback win against the Miami Dolphins. That was a pivotal game, I think, for the Dave Canales, Bryce Young tandem here in Carolina. That was a pivotal game that they had to win. Again, shout out Rico Dowd, who had the game of the season so far for a running back. But I felt like after a pretty poor first half, Bryce Young locked in. He found Tedero and McMillan. Xavier Legette caught a big touchdown in this game. I think that, despite his really slow start, I think that was a big game for him, this season to get him going. I think the offensive line, despite playing a couple backups, probably played their best game of the year there. And defensively, they were able to lock in on defense in the second half and hold this team to help that comeback, spring to life there. So I think that if you're Carolina, you got some momentum going. You've won 2 of the last 3 games. I think that, you got a big couple weeks, coming in to maybe see if they can get in the mix for that wild card spot. Don't know if they'll, get one of those spots, but I think that they could be in the mix for that for sure. Moving on to our number 23 team, dropping 5 spots, probably the most disappointing performance of the year out of any team. It's the Arizona Cardinals. And I was driving back from Columbus this weekend, and the unfathomable happened with Arizona. You have Amari DiMercato drop a ball at the 1-inch line, up 21-6, I believe, at that time. And there was 8 minutes left in the game, I think, or 12 minutes left or something like that. And if he scores, it's a 28-6 game. And I had Amari DiMercato in a fantasy league. So Amari DiMercato, I'm not very happy with you in general at all right now. And then, the interception that they got, game-sealing interception with under 5 minutes to play, I think. And they fumble it, kick it around, and then Tennessee recovers it in the end zone. And it's what happened? It was watching, a cartoon. It was just crazy. And then to try and close out the game from that point on, they went run, pass, and it was and just brutal. And Jonathan Gannon, I don't know if he's the guy, man. I mean, just a crazy collapse. And their offense was really humming to that point, and then to that point in time, and then the fumble happened, and Kyler had to get checked, and then he came back into the game, but he had a foot injury, and he just didn't look right, and then came back out, and he looked really good. I mean, this loss, people are trying to blame Kyler for this loss, and it's not on him. It's on the stupidity of everybody else. I mean, just brutal, man. I mean, so Cardinals, they have to go to Indy this week, and that's a big game for them. I mean, that's a pivotal game for the Arizona Cardinals. We'll see what they look like, but what a brutal game, man. Moving on to our number 22 team, dropping 12 spots this week. You heard that right, 12 spots. It's the Baltimore Ravens, and injuries galore, man. I mean, no other way to put it. I gotta drop them this low. I was gonna see how they were gonna look against Houston with Cooper Rush before I really, drop them big time. But here we are. We're dropping them big time, and you got the Rams this week. That's probably a loss, whether or not Lamar plays, and then you got the bye week. It's probably put up or shut up time after the post bye week for Baltimore. I mean, they couldn't do anything. They couldn't do anything on against Houston on Sunday. It was brutal, man. You hope that Cooper Rush can maybe get some magic going against the Rams, but I looked at that to be another loss in that column there. Defensively, they just traded Odafe Oweh for Alohi Gilman, which doesn't really make a ton of sense to me. I mean, I know that Kyle Hamilton's hurt, and they need another guy for that system, but I don't get it, man. I really don't get it. Parting ways with Owe, which I didn't think they were going to pay him anyways, but, like, you need pass rush. I mean, like, because Madubuike's hurt. That's your best pass rusher, and Van Noy's been banged up already this season. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know if they're punting this season or what they're doing. I don't think you should punt this season with Lamar coming back soon, but, yeah, it's going to be put up or shut up time for Baltimore for sure. Moving on to our number 21 team, staying put this week, I have the Minnesota Vikings. An ugly game for Minnesota, but they got it done. I think that's what matters in this one. Carson Wentz kind of had an up and down game, kind of a Carson Wentz game. Jordan Mason, had the fumble, which, Led to Cleveland's first touchdown, and then he kind of, had a much better game after that. Xavier Scott also fumbled as well. But Justin Jefferson looks great. Jordan Addison, he was benched in the first quarter of this game due to a coach's decision, ends up catching the game-winning touchdown. Hopefully he can, get his head on straight there for Minnesota because he's a very talented football player. And this defense, did, pretty well against this. I know they were playing Cleveland, but, kind of locked in when, the time came there for Minnesota. So, they're going to look to string a couple of wins here and, see if they can continue this momentum here. Moving on to our number 20 team, dropping a spot, it is the Chicago Bears, who are on bye this week. Not really much to talk about here with Chicago. I think it's more so of what other teams did this week rather than what the Bears did. But, I haven't really, changed my thoughts on them. I think that they, they're a solid football team, and, they, need to go into Washington next week, Monday Night Football, with a big game, and they need to perform well in that one to continue their hope for a playoff spot. Moving on to my number 19 team, dropping 2 spots. Another team that was on a bye week last week, we have the Atlanta Falcons. Another team that, in my opinion, really hasn't changed of them. I think just other teams, like I said, impressed me more this week. I think that Atlanta, they're in kind of a pivotal spot here too with, Carolina picking up a win and Tampa having a really good, season so far, that they're, in that kind of mix for a wild card spot. We'll see what they can, if they can string together some more consistent performances there. Moving on to my number 18 team, moving up 4 spots, I have the Houston Texans. Badly needed that win against Baltimore, and they might be, right back in kind of that mix for a playoff spot. I thought C.J. Stroud looked the best he has all year. Shout out to the Iowa State boys, Xavier Hutchinson, Jaden Higgins, and Jalen Noel. 2 of those guys catching touchdowns in this game. Xavier Hutchinson with 2 touchdowns. Always thought he was a great ball player. I know bias is an Iowa State fan, but he was kind of buried here on a really good receiving depth chart, and he looked great in that one. And defensively, they had him in hell, man. I mean, I know you're playing against Cooper Rush, but great defensive performance here from Houston. Would like to see them continue to string together some good football. Kind of a, maybe a fringe playoff team right now. We'll see if Houston can kind of get in that for sure playoff mix. Moving on to my number 17 team, dropping 4 spots. I already can see in the comment section people going to be upset. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers fans, do not get on me. It's just other teams really impressed me this week. I think that they have a big couple divisional opponents the next couple of weeks, so they'll probably move up, over the next couple of weeks. But just other teams impressed me this week, and sorry, Steelers fans, you were on a bye. You couldn't do anything about it. So not your fault, but you're dropping 4 spots. Moving on to my number 16 team, moving up 4 spots. It is the Dallas Cowboys, who, I know it's the Jets. I know it's the Jets, and Steelers fans are probably like, you really put Dallas above us after beating the Jets. But Dak Prescott, man, balling, absolutely balling, looking really good. Probably one of the front runners for MVP right now. I think it's between him and Justin Herbert right now for the MVP. And I can't say it enough, man. Javonte Williams looks really, really good. Change of scenery did him well. He finally looks fully recovered from that torn ACL 2 seasons ago. And George Pickens looked really good. Ryan Flournoy had a really good game this week. He popped for me when I was watching them. Jake Ferguson had a good week, and despite the injuries on the O-line, they held their own against a good Jets pass rush. And defensively, I felt like they played a little bit better this week. Kind of, especially in the first half, really kept the Jets in check. Breece Hall was moving the ball a little bit on them, but I felt like their pass defense was a little bit better, albeit against the Jets, but, we like to see improvement there from the Dallas Cowboys. Moving on to my number 15 team, dropping 10 spots. It is the Los Angeles Chargers. I don't necessarily think this is how I feel about this team, because I think they're better than this spot, but the injuries are stacking up for this team. I think, this team badly needs Joe Alt back. They cannot protect Herbert, who I felt like played pretty well in this game, but they just couldn't, give anything more than they did. Omarion Hampton's now on IR, and I'm excited to see what Kamani Vidal and Hassan Haskins can do, but that's a big-time loss for them, down their top 2 running backs, and they just haven't been able to really, play consistently on offense. I didn't even feel like this defense played bad football either. Yeah, they gave up 27 points, but, it's just kind of brutal when the offense puts you in the situation that, they do. So, tough one there for the Chargers, but hopefully they can bounce back. Moving on to the number 14 team in this week's Power Rankings, moving up 9 spots, I have the New England Patriots. People are going to call me a homer. They're going to call me a homer in the comment section below, but hear me out. Hear me out here. The Patriots walked into Buffalo, beat Buffalo on their home turf, had the better quarterback in the matchup between Drake May and Josh Allen. Drake May outplayed Josh Allen. Stephon Diggs went in there, had his own version of a revenge game. They forced 3 turnovers against Buffalo, and they, hit a game-winning field goal to beat them. They looked great. And, I will say, offensively, they still got to work some stuff out. They couldn't run the ball in this game. Ramondre Stevenson had another fumble in this game, which Patriots fans are grilling him for, but, now they need him. I mean, they need him with Gibson hurt. I mean, I feel terrible for Antonio Gibson, torn ACL, but anytime Travion Henderson is off the field is a good time for the Patriots. Don't put him on the field. He's actively hurting this team more than Mondre is, and Mondre has, 4 fumbles on the year? I said it. If you don't believe me, watch the tape. Offensive line was great in this one. Will Campbell, coming out party. Shout out Will Campbell. I was definitely of the we should draft Hetero and McMillan crowd, but Will Campbell, awesome in this game. He was fantastic. Jared Wilson was fantastic. Bradbury, Onwenu, and Moses were also great in this game. The 4 sacks were attributed to May, so he's got to stop putting himself in that position. But fantastic game from the O-line. And then defensively, Christian Gonzalez, he might be the second best corner in football. He was all over the field on Sunday Night Football. He had Keon Coleman absolutely on locks in that game. Just a fantastic game from Christian Gonzalez. And defensively as a whole, really good game. Kept James Cook in check. Forced Josh Allen to make some mistakes in that game. Marcus Jones had a beautiful interception. I have not been fired up about a game, about a Pats game since 2021. I haven't been that fired up. So shout out to New England Patriots this week. Big time win going to Buffalo, getting that done. Moving on to my number 13 team, dropping a spot, I have the Seattle Seahawks. Absolute shootout this week in Tampa. 2 really prolific teams in the NFC. That was one of the best games of the year, man. That was an awesome game to watch. Sam Darnold continues to play really, really good football. He's probably in the top 5 for MVP right now, if I had to guess. Just great football from him. Jackson Smith and Jigba is playing out of his mind. I kind of was a little bit lower on him than the consensus coming into the year, but he's been awesome, man. Jackson Smith and Jigba deserves all the flowers. He's playing like a top 5 receiver in the league right now. And then defensively, I think that, they just played a really good Tampa team this week. Baker Mayfield was absolutely on fire. And, if it wasn't for that Darnold interception, maybe they win that game. But I think, we might be seeing that matchup later in the season. We'll see. Moving on to my number 12 team, moving up 2 spots, I have the San Francisco 49ers. Big win on Thursday Night Football. And, as a guy who got to watch Mac Jones a lot, as a former, Patriots first-round pick, I'm happy for Mac Jones. And I think that part of the reason that he, kind of flamed out in New England was we failed him. I think that I'm happy to see Mac Jones and Kendrick Bourne kind of bring back some 2021 magic. That was pretty cool to see. Christian McCaffrey, had a great game for San Francisco in this one, and they kept Mac mostly upright. There was a couple times where he, where he got hit by Jared Verse in this game, and it looked like he was, getting injured. At that one point in time after he, I can't remember if he threw a touchdown or not, but and then defensively, some big time stands early. They forced some turnovers, early in this football game to get them out to the 14-0 lead. Kind of struggled to cover Puka, and Devontae Adams in the game. And then, in overtime, huge stop on Kyron Williams, which I question the Rams play calling there, but that's a big time win. And Kyle Shanahan, easily front runner for Coach of the Year for me right now. He's coaching his butt off with, all the injuries and everything. Shout out the 49ers, man. They're still a dangerous team in this league. Moving on to my number 11 team, moving up 4 spots, is the Jacksonville Jaguars, coming off of a huge Monday Night Football win. And, man, I can't quit Trevor Lawrence, man. And I know that he's played so inconsistent this year. You saw that on the final drive of Jacksonville's season, just like bailing out of clean pockets, stumbling, bumbling, making some questionable decisions, and then threw an absolute seed to Brian Thomas, down the sideline, who probably had his best game of the season year, and then throws the out route to De'Ami Brown, which was another beautiful throw, and then stumbles, gets into the end zone for a touchdown. Trevor showed some guts in this game, man. Really love to see that from him. I think that there was a big question mark coming into the year if he just loved football, and I think that proved it right there, that he loved football in that game there. Travis Etienne, another great performance from him. Like I said, Brian Thomas Jr., great performance, although losing Brenton Strange to IR, at this point in time in the season is a brutal feat. He's been good for them in both the receiving game and as a blocker. And then defensively, man, Josh Hines-Allen is a dog. I mean, he had an absolute great game, missing Trayvon Walker. Didn't know if they would have a chance to win this game. And Devin Lloyd, what a play on that pick six, man. He has been awesome this season. Loved him coming out of Utah as a first-round prospect. Sometimes it's taken these linebackers a couple of years to really figure it out. But once they figure it out, man, they're special players. And Devin Lloyd has been awesome this year, man. Tyson Campbell had a really good game in this one for Jacksonville. That defense has played really, really well, man. Shout out the Jags defense for sure. Moving on to my number 10 team, moving up 6 spots, it is the Washington Commanders. I feel like this team has just gone up, down, up, down, up, down. My opinion is really fluctuated on this team weekly. Jaden Daniels came back and he played really well, man. He played awesome in that football game. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt coming out party. He was fantastic in that game, kind of established himself as the lead back, and even though, no Terry McLaurin, they were still able to move the ball, very well in this game, and defense looked really good. Dan Quinn has those guys playing really good football. So Washington, I think, they were a big-time regression candidate for me. I picked them to not make the playoffs, and I think that they have just kind of answered that bell, whether it was Mariota playing or Daniels. I think that they've really answered that bell, and I think the Commanders look like a team that can compete for, a wild card spot. I don't know if they can compete for the NFC East. We'll see when they match up with Philly, but they got a big Monday Night Football game against the Chicago Bears this week, so we'll see how that one goes. Kind of a replay of the Hail Mary last season, so that'll be an interesting game to watch for sure. Moving on to my number 9 team, dropping 3 spots, it is the Kansas City Chiefs. And I thought that in this game that they got a couple of lucky breaks in this one that were able to keep them in this game. The interception that they didn't call the DPI on for sure was one of them. But I think, Mahomes continues to look well, Tyquan Thornton making plays for this team. Worthy back helps them for sure. Marquise Brown looking good. Kelsey's, still hanging in there. And they finally got the run game going this week. Kareem Hunt looked pretty good. Pacheco looked pretty good. So that's, maybe an encouraging sign for them, is that their run game looked the best it has all season. And as far as, defensively goes, I think that they started off really hot and then they just couldn't, they couldn't finish. And I think that that's been, part of the problem for Kansas City this year, is they haven't been able to finish games on, one side of the ball or both. And defensively, they couldn't finish the game in this one. They had an opportunity and they couldn't do it. And it's gut check time for them. Their schedule doesn't lighten up at all. So we'll see how they, respond to this one. They have Detroit at home, this week. So we'll see how that goes. Moving on to my number 8 team, moving up 3 spots, I have the Denver Broncos, and I still don't know how to feel about this team. I think they showed that they can hang with any team, though, this week, for sure. They were really struggling through 3 quarters, and then that 4th quarter hit, and they were, dialed. And I think Cortland Sutton, again, kind of the driver of this offense, looking really good. J.K. Dobbins, R.J. Harvey look really good. Bo Nix probably played his best quarter of the season in the fourth quarter. He looked really sharp in that fourth quarter. I hope that can continue throughout, the season. O-line still looks really good. They definitely won that matchup up front against Philly there. Defensively, they were able to stop them. And I felt like part of it was Philly, for some reason, and we'll talk about this more, didn't give Saquon the ball. He only had 9 touches, but they were able to keep him in check. They gave Jalen Hurts fits in that game, too. Nick Bonito had another phenomenal day. Zach Allen had a phenomenal day. Surtain had a really good day. A couple penalties that were questionable, in my opinion, but he had a really good day. So, Denver, man, they deserve all the credit in the world. Going into the link and beating Philly is a tough thing to do, and they did it. And they are legit contenders. I'm not moving them up maybe as much as some people think, because I think that, they've just been a little bit too inconsistent for me. So I think I need to see them, replicate it, and then we can start to talk about Denver as a potential top 5 team. Moving on to my next team here, coming in at number 7, moving up 2 spots in the power rankings. I have the Indianapolis Colts, who blew out the Raiders this week. Not really so much, learning anything new about the Colts this week as, a couple of other teams like, Kansas City kind of and Baltimore, kind of faded this week here. So I think that, Indy, they're a good football team, man. They're a really good football team, and, they're going to be, in play for the AFC South crown here with Jacksonville and potentially Houston. Daniel Jones, another good week. Jonathan Taylor looks amazing. I'm so happy for Jonathan Taylor, man. He looks awesome this season. And defensively, man, they made Geno pay this week without some of their key pieces there. DeForest Buckner still, looking really good at his age, and they had Geno in hell, man. They took advantage of him trying to fit balls into tight windows, and they were able to get some key turnovers there, and they were just a well-oiled machine this week for the Indianapolis Colts. Moving on to my number 16, moving up 1 spot is the Green Bay Packers, on bye this week. They have Cincinnati coming up this week. Thoughts haven't changed on them. Still think they're a really good football team. Just on bye this week. Move up a little bit, because of some other teams. That's all I got for the Green Bay Packers this week. Moving on to my number 5 team, dropping 1 spot, I have the Los Angeles Rams, who fell to the 49ers on Thursday Night Football. I don't think my opinion changes much from the Rams. They overcame a slow start in this one, which, I think shows kind of the grit that this team has. They were able to, to kind of bounce back. They were able to get the ball to Puka, Devontae at that point, got Kyron Williams going. Blake Corum was brutal in this game, man. He had a couple of, really bad plays for the Rams that really costed them in this game. It probably even cost them the game. And then again, McVay on the 4th down, put the ball in Puka's hands, man. He's been the best player in the NFL this season on the offensive side of the ball, probably in the league. For sure, the best pass catcher. And I think defensively, they buckled down after those first 2 drives. They buckled down and they really, made Mac Jones uncomfortable in the second half of that football game, and they made the plays that they needed to win that game. They just came up a little bit short for Los Angeles. I still don't have any, queries about this team at all. Matthew Stafford's playing at an elite level. He's probably in the top 3 for MVP race for me at this point in time. Moving on to my number 4 team, moving up 4 spots, it is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming off of a huge road win against the Seattle Seahawks. Baker Mayfield is that guy, man. Speaking of another MVP candidate, man, Baker looks really good. No Bucky Irving, no Mike Evans, no right side of the O-line. Didn't matter. Bucks came in there, got it done. Emeka Egbuka looks really, really good, man. He has been awesome this season. His route running continues to be super impressive. His contested catch ability continues to be super impressive. That guy's just been awesome, man. Chris Godwin, I hope he continues to ramp up as the season goes along. He hasn't quite looked like himself yet, but I think as the season goes on, he'll look good. Rashad White had a good game, and defensively, the Bucs came up with a big turnover when they needed it. Who else but Levante David, the consistent leader of this defense over the course of, a decade plus. Levante David continues his Hall of Fame career down there in Tampa. He's been awesome, man. And good on Tampa, for picking up that win. I faded them. I picked Seattle in this one, and they proved me wrong for sure. So shout out to Tampa. Moving on to our number 3 team, staying put, we have the Buffalo Bills, who, coming off the Sunday Night Football loss to the Patriots, I don't think the Bills played their best football in this game. Had a couple of, big-time mistakes, some big-time fumbles, an interception by Josh Allen where he went high-low, back to high, and Marcus Jones read it like a book. And I just question, this was a Sean McDermott coached football game, if I've ever seen one. I just don't think McDermott's going to be the guy to get you over the hump, Bills fans. I'm sorry. I know they're kind of 50-50 on him, but I'm out on McDermott. I really don't think that he's the guy to do it, and I think that proves why they're, primetime game just didn't show up in this one against a hungry Patriots football team. I felt like Josh Allen didn't play his best game, but he did make enough plays to win that game. I actually thought, on the drive that they had to tie it, I was like, here comes the Josh Allen, take the lead, and then, it's going to put us in a position where we need a touchdown. And, I didn't know if we got it, but we were able to get a big stop there and hold them. And James Cook didn't really do much in this game. Patriots did a good job of, stopping him. And I wonder when, a pass catcher is going to step up. I felt like Dalton Kincaid was kind of a big key in this one for Buffalo, and they got him going. Shakir had some nice plays there too, and so did Keon. But, and I think defensively in this one, the Patriots were able to move the ball. And outside of a Ramondre Stevenson turnover, I really didn't think the Bills' defense played great at all. Drake May kind of had, his will in this one. He played outstanding, and they couldn't cover Stephon Diggs. So I think, back to the drawing board for Buffalo. They have, who do they have this week? I think it's a lesser opponent. So back to the drawing board for Buffalo. And we'll see if they can get back in the win column next week. Moving on to my number 2 team, dropping a spot, the former number 1 team. I have the Philadelphia Eagles, who dropped to Denver. I think in this game it was really confusing. They relied on Jalen Hurts to win them the football game. I think he threw it 40 times, and we saw what happened. You're not going to win a football game if you're Philly relying on Jalen Hurts to throw the ball 40 times. And I'm lower on Jalen Hurts, I think, than a lot of people, and I think that's kind of why. If you're relying on him to win you a football game, 8 times out of 10, I don't think he's going to do it for you. And giving Saquon only 9 touches is absolutely criminal. What are we doing, Philly? Why is that a thing? And I think defensively in this one, they played well. They played well enough to win the game. Allowing 21 points is well enough to win the football game. Fourth quarter, they just kind of collapsed. And, I think that, that pains Philly. They got a short week this week against the Giants, so we'll see how they come out in that one. And then the new number 1 football team in the National Football League for me is the Detroit Lions, moving up 1 spot. Ass kicking of the Cincinnati Bengals in that one, firing on all cylinders. They look really, really good in this game. They're going to get Aleem McNeil back soon to bulk that defense even more. And, I think that their offense is looking really good. Jahmyr Gibbs looks really good. David Montgomery had a bounce-back week this week. Amon-Ra St. Brown is continuing to be one of the best receivers in the league. Sam Laporta looks back to what he was as a rookie. Isaac T-Slaw making some plays there for Cincinnati, for Detroit. And then defensively, losing Terrion Arnold's a blow for them, losing a starting corner. But, I still think that Detroit, pretty much manhandled Cincinnati this week on the defensive side of the ball, biting kneecaps, as they like to say down there. So another good week for Detroit here. They move up to my number 1 team in the league. But that'll be all for my Week 6 power rankings. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below, what you agree with, what you disagree with. And if you, like the content, make sure to subscribe. We'll be doing these weekly. I will see you guys on Thursday for my Week 6 picks. But without further ado, have a great day, everyone, and peace.